My eighth favorite album of 2020 is KG by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. The center of the psych music universe right now is Australia, and King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard are the center of that center. Once again, releasing another just amazing psych album. This one explores more micro tunings, and it's just kind of all over the map in the best kind of way. It's even got a nice little dance number in there. Yeah, but check it out. KG, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Great album. Welcome back to my channel. It is cold here in Texas. I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, ranking and reviewing every single Frank Zappa album released during his lifetime. We are currently on number 37. And I'm going to start off by apologizing that this album, London Symphony Orchestra, as conducted by Kent Nagano, playing Zappa's music, should have been ranked higher than number 36, Does Humor Belong in Music? I finally just felt I had to pull the trigger on Does Humor because there's really, really good solos on there, and I respect the album choice to like format it as a concert, but this album is better. I enjoy this album more. I listen to this album more. London Symphony Orchestra. A little backstory on this. So I'm going to talk about the streaming release, the version that if you go to Amazon, it's the only one you can buy unless you're willing to pay, for some reason, $907 for a CD copy of the first volume. So this was released like three other albums Frank has released. The Shut Up and Play Your Guitar series, which he released 1 and then 2 and 3, but you could only find them all together as one package now. Joe's Garage, which was 1, 2 and 3, but you could only find them together as one package now. And then this, which was 1 and 2, but you could only find it together as one package, but resequenced. When I listen to this, I have the CDs for both 1 and 2. And I don't have this version of it, the streaming version, but I'm going to talk about the streaming version because if you're going to listen to it based on this recommendation, or you're going to buy it based on this recommendation, you're going to get this version unless you're going to pay $907 for that rare Volume 1 CD. So anyways, I'm going to talk about the version that's available on like Spotify and streaming, Amazon, and all that kind of stuff. So this was classical music, Frank's classical music. Some new songs on here, some classical versions of old songs were on here, some classical versions of old classical songs are on here. So this was a mix of a whole bunch of stuff. London Symphony Orchestra recorded, I think in 1983 was when it was recorded, and then it was released also in 83. So it was a pretty quick turnaround, and then I think Volume 2 was not released till 84. I'm not exactly sure on that. But anyways, as it is now, it is released. It is essentially 7 songs, though 3 of the songs are broken up into like different movements. I am not a classical music fan. I don't ever listen to classical music pretty much other than this. I am a kindergarten teacher, so I do know Holt's The Planets. I know Peter and the Wolf. We listen to some more popular classical music in class to expose my kids to that, but I don't listen to it on my own. Other than, say, orchestral favorites or Yellow Shark or Frank stuff, essentially. But this is a really good CD. I don't think it's as good as Orchestral Favorites. It doesn't quite have the life that that one has. And there are tracks that are on both of these. And I prefer the Orchestral Favorites version of the tracks over these tracks. But this also still has stuff that you can't get anywhere else that I really enjoy. So, as it is released now, the first disc of the London Symphony Orchestra Volume 1 and 2, as it is packaged, has 3 songs broken up into different movements. It's a total of, I think, 7 different tracks. First song is Bob and Dacron, which was originally on Volume 2. This is 2 movements. The first part of it is doesn't really engage me that much. I think it's the weakest of all the tracks on here is Bob and Dacron, the first movement. But then something happens in the second movement and things get weird in Dacron and possibly a little sinister, definitely more eventful. And the second movement is phenomenal. The second movement is, I think, the best part of the second disc in the original release. In the first release, it's not, but it's the first part of the movement kind of sets up the second, and then the second goes darker, weirder places. Sounds a little more like a Frank type composition. But as a 1-2 pairing, they work really well. Same kind of goes with Sad Jane. That's the next song, which is also broken up into two movements. The first part feels sad. It's kind of, it's a more slower piece. And then the second movement gets sadder, but also gets weirder and gets stranger. I don't think it's as effective as the second movement of Bob and Dacron, but I think the two movements of Sad Jane work better as a whole piece than the two movements of Bob and Dacron. And then the first CD of the new edition closes out with Mo and Herb's Vacation, which is three movements. If you are a Joe's Garage fan, you will recognize bits of Wet T-Shirt Night or Fembot in a Wet T-Shirt on this. That little melody is repeated often in this. Also, Arthur Barrow and Vinnie Colaiuta would play a sort of black page version of this, where it's just the two of them doing it. Would play a black page version of this live on the Fall 78 tour that's worth checking out. But this is a long one. I think it's like 27 minutes long. It's three movements. Again, I think the second movement of the three is the best of the movements, but all three of the movements in this are great. It sounds like something is happening. Frank's classical stuff, especially on Mo and Herb's Vacation, Herbs, I keep saying Herbs, it's probably Herb because it's a person. It's very cinematic. You can tell he's telling a story. So while, again, it has a lot of frankness in it and it's very busy and a lot is happening and it changes like bam, bam, bam all over the place, there's a cinematic quality to it. And one of the things I really like about Mo and Herb's Vacation is there's a lot of instances where individual instruments kind of get a solo, not maybe an improvised solo, but they're playing by themselves, violin, some sort of wind instrument. I think maybe it's a clarinet, gets something at some point, but there's a lot of little piano has a really nice part, but there's a lot of moments where like individual instruments just get a chance to shine. And so that's the first CD as it is released. Three kind of new classical pieces, Bob and Dacron, Sad Jane, Mo and Herb's Vacation. And I think it goes from the weakest of the three to the best of the three. It's a nice progression. The second disc is much more familiar territory. All previously released tracks. You get a version of Envelopes, which had been around since 70, but just was previously released in 82 with the Steve Vai, Mars and Man performance, an instrumental version. It is really hard to listen to this classical version. If you've not heard Envelopes and you want to check this out, go listen to Halloween 77 or Hammersmith Odeon and listen to the Envelopes on there. It has lyrics that Tommy Marr sings, and once you hear those lyrics, you kind of can't unhear them. And so to hear the London Symphony Orchestra playing something that essentially squat on my blaster, make it go faster, it is pretty special. Yes, there are no lyrics, but knowing that those are the lyrics and that the London Symphony Orchestra is playing them, it's a good moment. That's followed by Pedro's Dowry. The one on Orchestral Favorites is about 7.5 minutes long. This one is 10 minutes long. The last 2 minutes of this are phenomenal. Like, it's a whole new, I think it's an entirely new added piece. If it's not added, it's been extended to last like 2 minutes, where before it obviously did not. I love this song, but that ending is just... It feels kind of like a Grand Wazoo type slow jam. It has a really improvised sort of just kind of we're going for a while feel to it. It's a really neat ending to this song. Bogus Pomp follows the big 25-minute Bogus Pomp. This has a lot of Holiday in Berlin, Would You Like a Snack quotations in it. Some 200 Motel themes are throughout. As that is where this originally originated. I don't think this version is as good as the orchestral favorites version. It just doesn't have that zing and that pop that does, but it's still a really great song, a really good performance. It's definitely not a slacker. And the whole thing ends with Strictly Gentile, which is probably the most genteel version of all the versions. Obviously instrumental, so you don't get the 200 Motels with the lyrics. You don't get the Steve Vai, Ed Mann, Tommy Mars weirdness of the 82 band, or the 78 band, or all the other bands that did this song. But it's just, it's great. It's a great way to end this. And that's how it is released now. Originally, the CD I have, Volume 1, is Sad Jane, Pedro's Dowry, and Envelopes, which is just cool, amazing side of music. Sad Jane starts off kind of slow, and then it gets weirder as it goes on. Then you get Pedro's Dowry, which is just one of Frank's more weirder kind of classical pieces with that beautiful ending. And then to have Envelopes close it out with the squat on my blaster is just weird. And then side 2 of that is just Mo and Herb's Vacation, the entire 27-minute journey, which is worthy of taking its own side. I think Volume 1 is by far the better of the 2 volumes. Volume 2 is Bogus Pomp on one side, a lesser version than the orchestra favorites, but still worth hearing. And then Bob and Dacron and Strictly Gentile. Again, Bob and Dacron I think is the weakest of all the tracks on here, and then Strictly Gentile is, the calmest of all the versions of this song. So yeah, if you have a chance to only buy one version and you can get a cheap, affordable copy of London Symphony Orchestra 1, that's the one to get. Other than that, the whole thing is worth checking out. It definitely should have been ranked higher than Does Humor Belong in Music. My bad. I apologize for that. But anyways, yeah. If you like classical music or if you don't like classical music, this is still Frank being Frank, and I think you could enjoy it if you're a Zappa fan anyways. But anyways, check it out. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Subscribe, all that stuff, and stay warm. Have a good holidays. Be safe. Yeah. Take care, everybody. Peace.